Well, I think there's any doubt that the housing crisis represents one of the most important political issues of our age, and one that particularly affects young people. It was conservative politicians who created the housing crisis through the adoption of neoliberal, profit-driven housing market model. It is, I think, common knowledge that I have supported and continue to support the building of council houses at the scale of the 1950s and 60s, and promoting and supporting cooperative housing in Wales. First, I'd like to focus on tenants in privately rented housing. That's because life of the tenant is often a constant psychological hardship, with too many tenants living under the fear of a no-fault eviction or having to deal with difficult landlords, and also having to deal with price increases. We have too few houses. We have too few affordable houses. House prices have increased due to a shortage of accommodation, but also government policies. The biggest housing shortages are in Cardiff and Swansea. It's obvious to me that we need more council housing. The only time post-war when housing supply equaled housing demand was when large-scale council house building was taking place. And and previously private rented accommodation was available for own occupation. It was a win-win situation. Cheaper houses became available for own occupation, and council housing became available. We got too few council houses being built and lots of privately rented accommodation, which removed the bottom end of the market, the lower priced houses, from people who wish to get on the property ladder. While the longer term solution is building more council houses, there are short term solutions. Housing is the great challenge facing all of Britain, including Wales. And in the post-war period, it can be broken down into two periods. First, 1945 to 80. During this period, we saw a huge growth in council housing, the building of a large number of new estates, especially larger urban areas. We also saw the growth of own occupation and the building of large private estates. Over recent years, there's been a large increase in the number of empty properties. I often describe it as over 20,000. There's all sorts of numbers floating around, but every one of them is over 20,000. And that is 20,000 too many, and something has got to be done about it. There's been an increase in the number of single-person households because more young people are living alone, and an increase in single pensioner households. So even with the same number of people, we need more property. Council housing has declined to the sale of a large number of houses and a failure to build new ones. There have also been a substantial growth in housing association property, but nowhere near enough to make up for the decline in council house building. Decline in the private house rented sector in the 1960s and 70s has been reversed, with huge increase in private landlords, some the large-scale owners and others using an additional property as an alternative to a pension. As a consequence of benefit changes, demand has increased for smaller size accommodation. Since 1980, you have seen almost a complete end to council house building, the growth of own occupation, which has stalled, and the growth of housing associations to major landlords has occurred, but they are not anywhere near making up for the loss in council houses. The other period in the 20th century in housing supply did a reasonable job of meeting demand was between the wars. That's because we didn't have any planning policies. That if you owned land, you could go and build houses on it. For the town and country planning act came in 1940s, you could build, and you saw the development of housing, mainly private housing, on the edges of big cities. But I don't think anybody wants to go back to the position where if you own the land, you can build and there's no planning control. I certainly don't. So we need to do two things. We need to ensure we have enough properties and we bring the empty ones back into use. I'm going to talk about cooperative housing. A question I ask regularly, and people have probably heard me say it, why is cooperative housing so popular in places as diverse as New York City and Scandinavia, but has failed to become a standard form of accommodation in Wales and the rest of Great Britain? Housing cooperatives are uncommon in the UK compared to Europe. Most are based in urban areas and consist of affordable shared accommodation where members look after the property themselves. And we had developments in the 1900s, a new wave in the 1960s, and we've had a small new wave now, somewhere around universities, especially where accommodation is incredibly expensive for universities such as Edinburgh. They normally they're developed with government assistance, or a small group of housing associations have actually, the cooperative housing association have developed without it by using members' loans and mortgage funds and growth. I mean, in 2012, which is 13 years ago, Welsh Government announced that they wanted to see homes built in Wales on a cooperative model. This started the Wales Cooperative Housing Project, managed by the Wales Cooperative Centre and funded by the Welsh Government and Nationwide Foundation. The Wales Cooperative Housing Project helped develop 137 cooperative homes in 6 different local authorities. It has supported existing cooperatives and community-led schemes across the country, upskilled, identified cooperative community-led housing champions, developed an online toolkit, helped local authorities develop policies and resources to grow and support the demand for cooperative and community housing. Compass, which is now the cooperative housing group, is supporting a project which deliver a comprehensive package of support that helps Wales cooperative and community-led housing groups through all stages of the housing scheme. With funding, as I said, from the Welsh Government and Nationwide Foundation, but it's certainly not going anywhere near the level, right, that we need. And it's not we don't talk about it. We in this meeting we probably do, but as a society we don't discuss. We talk about the privately rented or own occupation or social housing being either council or housing association. We don't talk about cooperative housing. I mean, it's so common in the rest of the world, and places like Vancouver have more cooperative housing than the whole of Britain. We got funding of £540,000 over the next 3 years to continue for Compass to continue its growth, but the growth is anemic, to say the least. We need to get far more cooperative housing being built. It'll help everybody. Mercer Valley Homes was established in 2009 when tenants voted to transfer their homes to a new non-profit organisation, which changed to a mutual in 2016, creating Wales' first tenant and employee mutual housing association. While many of us consider the development of cooperative housing as a socialist or left-wing idea, it is effectively apolitical. Cooperative housing is successfully developed in North America, Scandinavia, Western Europe, and to a much smaller extent in Britain. Where this work is in legislative action such as New York and Spain, or financial support of Sweden and Norway. Just look at that. Any of you watches some of those American programs like Sex and the City or John Lennon. Housing cooperatives are just part of life in New York. John Lennon lived in the Dakota building. I don't think anybody ever described him as being poor. So we need to get it being talked about. But we need, if we want to get large-scale cooperative housing, then we need to political will do it. We need to get it through on a national curriculum. We need people to talk about cooperatives. The importance of the option presented by cooperative forms of tenure, knowledge far beyond knowledge of developments far beyond our shores. If they can do it in Norway, they can do it in Spain, they can do it in New York, why can't we do it in Wales? It's a lack of will. I've talked, that's the third time I talked about how much we need council housing. I was one of those lucky people who grew up in a council estate. We need them. It's unfortunate Treasury rules do not treat council housing as an asset, so when the council build council housing, they're built out of income or out of borrowing, which is limited. If they treat the value of the house against the value of the cost of building, then we will solve the problem. It's a Treasury problem, unfortunately, and not one of the Welsh Government. Finally, if we want to build all the houses we need, we have a skills shortage and an aging construction workforce. The construction industry is facing a critical skills shortage that is impacting project timelines, cost and overall growth. The issue demands immediate attention and action. The shortage of skilled workers means that projects are taking longer to complete, leading to increased cost and delays. This lack of available talent is hindering the industry's ability to meet growing demand and capitalize on new opportunities. More workers are needed to ensure the industry can keep up with the pace of current projects and future developments. A larger skilled workforce will help maintain high standards of quality and safety, meet deadlines, and drive innovation within the industry. For over a decade, industry leaders, employers associations, and government bodies have warned about the construction industry impending skills loss. And this goes back to again to Thatcher when they stopped the apprenticeships just ended. And now this is 1979, 1980, 81. These people now should be there being the sort of skilled workers of today, but they're not. And everything's being affected. The costs are being driven up. the length of time for projects have been driven up by the lack of skilled workers. Skills and competence are critical for the construction industry's future, and various factors accelerate the sector's skills shortage to breaking point. We need to increase the number of construction apprentices available to keep construction workers in the industry. We need to encourage younger generations to get involved in construction. To interest young people in construction, we need to show real-life impact and career examples while they're still in school. We need people to see construction as an opportunity, and it's right the way through. It's not just working as a builder, not working as a carpenter, but it's all the other skill jobs, an architect. There's work for people who work to do the ordering, the whole range of jobs within construction. And we need to get people at all levels with all skill sets into working in construction. Otherwise, in 10 years' time, whoever sat here will be discussing the same problem. Thank you.
I'm going to share a few slides as I talk through.
Wonderful.
So good evening, everybody. Really good to be speaking to you all this evening. I'm Blase Lambert. I'm the Chief Executive of the Confederation of Cooperative Housing, CCH, which is the UK's trade representative body for cooperative and mutual housing. I'm also Treasurer of Cooperative Housing International, which is the global trade body. It's the sector body for housing within the International Cooperative Alliance, the ICA. And I sit on the ICA's board as well as the global housing representative. So be really interested when we get into the questions. If there's any questions about the international experience, I'm more than happy to share some of that perspective later on. But I'm going to speak primarily relating to the future of social housing and social housing in Wales in the brief slot that I have. Just first of all, just a bit of an introduction of my organisation. So CCH promotes the excellent work done by cooperative housing organisations in the UK, fostering communication and serving the sector and campaigning for quality housing cooperative solutions across the UK. We've got three sort of key areas of aim, really. Firstly, as you would expect from a trade body, we're there to lobby for the interests of the cooperative housing sector, its growth, effective partnerships being established and its sustainability over the long term. Secondly, to enable our member organisations, and we have just over 200 cooperatives in membership of the organisation. So the second aim that we have is to enable them to network and communicate with us and communicate with each other nationally and regionally, and to provide them with support and advice and guidance. And then to campaign for quality housing solutions and actions that will lead to the growth of the sector. We have what we call a centre of excellence. So we produce a code of governance for housing cooperatives. The document that you can see on the right is, I think, our fifth different incarnation of the code of governance. I wrote the first code of governance for housing co-ops in partnership with the National Housing Federation in England in 2001, and we're on to our fifth iteration. But we also produce more detailed governance and management guidance for co-ops. We maintain a substantial policy and procedure database. We have more than 150 model documents that sit within that database. We've published 5 sets of model rules that are all 2014 Cooperative and Community Benefit Society Act compliant and are registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. We partner up with Cooperatives UK, who do the incorporation work for new cooperatives on our behalf. We assist new and existing organisations in modelling their finances and their development proposals, their long-term asset management plans. We provide training and accreditation programs to people setting up co-ops, people sitting on the committees of co-ops, people advising co-ops. Indeed, in the early years of the Welsh Government programme that Mike was mentioning, we delivered essentially on subcontract for Compass, the support programme in Wales. And then through our accreditation programme, I provided training and accreditation to their in-house staff team and broader associate team to be able to branch that out, as we've done with 26 regional support hubs across different parts of the UK. We provide bespoke advisory services to organisations, from things like getting involved in neighbour dispute and conflict resolution work in co-ops, right through to some fairly detailed troubleshooting services that sometimes we have to provide. And we have a range of specific toolkits to assist co-op development, which we call Wayshaper. Our first Wayshaper toolkit was for people setting up new housing co-ops. Our second one was a sustainable development goals and retrofit toolkit for organisations, and we're currently working with Co-ops UK on producing a Wayshaper toolkit for new startups of all cooperative types, and developing that as a key resource to help with the UK government's manifesto commitment to double the size of the cooperative economy over the coming 5 years. So 2024, as you probably expect, we produced a manifesto that preceded the general election. I've not touched on the specific elements relating to cooperative housing development because I wanted to focus on social housing more broadly in this presentation, but there is a section for cooperative housing, there's a section for the broader social housing sector. The key things we're calling on and called on in terms of change in the social housing sector, firstly, is the extension of the right to manage provisions to cover housing association tenants. At the moment, if you live on a council-owned estate, you can set up a management co-op with your fellow tenants and take over management of the estate within a cooperative. You can't do that in a housing association, and we feel that that's an unfair situation. Why should some social housing tenants have a legal right and others not? Secondly, that more should be done to enable the residents living in social housing organisations have access to information about their rights and about the options that they have to shape their landlord's service delivery models. Really good social housing providers have really good resident involvement, but that's not a given, and there is a real difference out there across landlords. And even going onto the website of 10 random housing associations, you will find some of them have really easy to access complaints procedures, for example. Some of them you really have to work on to find their complaints procedure. Some telephone call centres you ring up and they just want to talk to you about your rent arrears. Some have a much broader service offer that goes beyond, are you paying us your rent? Otherwise, we've not really got much on this phone line to talk to you about. So that broadening of information. Thirdly, reshaping social housing such that it enables residents to take real power if they want that. Mike mentioned MV homes a number of years ago when we observed firstly the introduction of what was called stock transfer of local authority housing under the Major government, and then the acceleration of that under the Blair government. We looked at that, and a lot of housing associations were essentially being set up or taking stock from local authorities. Alongside that, local authorities have been stopped from building new council housing by the 1988 Housing Act under the Thatcher government. And we thought there has to be a cooperative alternative to doing this. So we set up what was called the Community Gateway model. That was mirrored in Wales by the Community Mutual model, and MV Homes was one of 8 housing stock transfers that took place in Wales. RCT Homes, for example, being another one. And we would want to see those options for residents to scale up in control and power more broadly, rather than it being the exception to the rule, so to say. We think that all housing associations specifically should be required to have at least one resident board member appointed for their skills, knowledge and experience, and then a national training programme should provide support to those resident board members to effectively play that role. We think that there should be more exploration of models of mutual governance, and I've just talked about the community mutual model, for example. And I think it's important that there is a strong and independent resident voice in the different parts of the UK, and not a resident voice that is funded or in some way controlled by the landlord and the landlord lobby, quite frankly. That's not independent and will not be effective. So the future of social housing in Wales, well, I think one of the really key issues moving forward is how the Welsh Housing Quality Standard is implemented, raising the quality of social housing in Wales. Similar standards being introduced in other parts of the UK as well, and that is changing the focus of many social housing providers, particularly housing associations, away from primarily focusing on building to rebalancing the focus on maintaining the quality of their existing stock, the homes that people live in, the homes that people are paying rent for. I would say, after the 1988 Housing Act, the more that housing associations have had to rely on reducing grant rates and leveraged private finance to build new homes, well, the cost of financing those private finance requirements, the interest payments, that comes out of the rent that tenants pay, and that's money that's diverted away from maintaining existing homes. We used to grant fund going right back to the Second World War onwards. We used to grant fund the building of social housing. We used to capital subsidy or capital subsidize. We've moved away from doing that, and that's escalated benefit bills. It's meant, as I say, that existing tenants' rents are diverted away from maintaining their homes and the quality of their homes to meeting private finance. We need to rebalance that. The future of social housing regulation, generally, again, a rebalancing away from just focusing on financial viability and governance, and moving towards an environment that focuses more on the services that residents are receiving and how residents get that information and the ability to hold their landlords to account. There will need to be new homes built, and action will need to be taken to bring to an end the problems that we suffer with homelessness. But I would say, just looking at some numbers relating to Wales, the most recent published social housing completion numbers for Wales showed that there were 3,200 homes completed. 2,000 of those, roughly, were developed by housing associations as social housing. 200 were developed by housing associations and intermediate rent. 640 new council homes, and the other 480 were other properties. That's a long way short of a single year's requirement. And in the 28 years that I've been in this sector broadly, every year targets are missed, every year, by all governments. And that compounds year on year the shortfall that there is. There will be the need to invest in retrofitting existing properties, to bring them up to standards to meet the net zero challenge that we face. We will need to address issues to enable residents to more affordably live in their homes from the perspective of home energy costs, and take action to tackle fuel poverty problems. But then there are this set of broader challenges that are playing out there. Mike mentioned the skills shortage issue. That's absolutely right. There was a skills shortage issue before many of the labour force that we were relying on from parts of Europe stopped working here after Brexit and COVID. Those skill shortages are exacerbated by that, but we've not been training enough people in this country to work in construction and related skills for decades. Cost inflation. My members report to me an average materials price inflation for repairs and maintenance for build materials of 20%. 20% cost inflation. And again, a couple of years of that sort of level of inflation in build costs, it's baked in. It doesn't disappear. That doesn't go away. And on the flip side of that, we're capping rents in social housing way below those build cost and repairs cost inflation levels. Again, that is creating a gap between income and expenditure. Add to that problems that persist relating to interest rates. Interest rates right now for social housing debt, which primarily are run at about 1% above government debt, are now as high as they were under the Truss government. They're as high as they were coming out the back of the credit crunch. And this is a real problem for a housing model that basically relies on private finance and debt. If debt is running at 5.5%, 6% rather than 2%, and that is the level that it's at now, that is a real issue for us completing affordable housing units with the grant rates that we're operating at. Land availability. There are real issues in certain parts of the country about bringing available land forward, about where land is held, who owns it. And also, finally, I would say there is the broader impact of second and holiday homes relating to that impact on related services. So, for example, the more that there are properties not occupied by a permanent population in a particular area, the less that services that are financed to support the broader population are being financed. And what happens? If we're scaling back on funding going into dealing with neighbourhood management issues or crime and antisocial behaviour and such things, the responsibility falls back onto social housing providers to pick up that gap within their stock. And the more that this is exacerbated, the more challenging that becomes for existing social housing providers to find available funding to put in other directions. There's my contact details. If any of you want to contact me outside of the session, I hope you found that an interesting can opener relating to social housing and its future, and look forward to participating in the rest of the session.
I think my speech certainly won't be as lengthy as Blase and the other gentleman. I'll keep it brief. I think there are a number of issues when it comes to meeting, the net zero target set out by the Welsh Government by 2050. There are bureaucratic, I think, hurdles in terms of the planning process as well, at Welsh Government level, but also natural resources Wales. We've got a TAN 15. It's been, a significant delay in that. We all know that's outdated and does not reflect planning, development management at a local level. With regards to skill shortages, absolutely, I agree with that. But along with that, of course, material costs have risen, the cost of living. And is our approach a top-down approach at the moment? And should we be shifting our approach at a more sort of ground-up, participatory approach where we are involving tenants, as Blase mentioned, and we are involving local experts, and we are involving those who actually feel the problems in their homes and who have lived experience as well. There are many people out there that have chronic conditions that have lived in properties when you have conversations with them, for 30 years and 40 years. And there's also stigma around that in terms of reaching out, I think, to governments. I know at a local level in Newport, I think it was through the Cardiff Capital Region programme, there's a local energy scheme, and the uptake on that was really low. Again, are we reaching out to these people at a local level, and are we shifting our approach in terms of communicating? Are we offering anonymous, sort of reporting where they can actually ask for help when it comes to these energy schemes? So that's, I think, one issue. In terms of the empty homes, you speak to a lot of people on the ground, and they tell you, I live in a 3-bedroom. Do I really need a 3-bedroom? I'm a single person, etc. But then along with that, there's, a significant need for single properties, single households at local level. And I think the issue is that due to the lack of and the shortage of those single bedroom properties, if you ask those individuals that are living in those 3 or 4 bedroom houses to move out, where do you take them? Again, that's another issue. We're looking at, high rising costs when it comes to hotels and B&Bs. It's a broader solution that we need to all think of, I think, and integrate our approaches and cut out the silos. Because what we find is there are silos out there, and I think departments, whether it's in government, and whether it's RSLs, whether it's businesses, everyone's almost holding their own corner, and they're not sharing information. Again, data is important, and it has to be real time as well, I think, in order for us to sort of shift and move forward in this contemporary period that we're in. So again, energy, I think, providers and companies, a lot, you have conversations, there are schemes out there. Again, timelines. Are we reaching out to those particular individuals that need those retrofit upgrades at a given time? Have they heard of these schemes? Is the government communicating it? Is it a community hub communicating it? We have to ask these questions. And I think all of these questions, we don't tend to ask at a sort of ground level. There is no simple solution to this problem. It is a broader problem. And I think we all need to come together and have these conversations if we do want to meet the target, the net zero target by 2050, which I feel now that we're nowhere near. If you look at the target for social homes, which the Welsh Government set out, we're looking at 20,000 homes by 2026, I want to say. We're nowhere near that. We have to modernize our approach. And I think that, of course, needs finance, it needs capital. But are we exploring different models in terms of capital itself? And are we agreeing on it? We've got green bonds out there, social impact bonds. Are we liaising with private partners, or is there a reluctance to sort of engage with private partners? Because I've had conversations with a lot of people, and of course I'm a socialist myself, but in this day and age, you have to be working with everyone to find a common solution. And that's it from me. Thank you.